For this lesson, we want to create an FAQ after the pricing section. We're going to create something that looks a little bit like this FAQ. We're going to have some text at the top, and we're going to have a list of questions and answers where people can click, and it's going to display the answer to that clickable question. Before we jump into the code, let's try to understand a little bit how this thing will work. The text part, the header, is just like we did before. It's going to be part of the main page.js, the server component. And these elements that we have here are clickable. There is some sense of user interaction. And if we try to understand a little bit deeper what's going on, we need to use the useState React hook that's going to have a Boolean that says, is it open or not? It needs an onClick event listeners. So when the user click on it, it's going to swap the value of the Boolean from false to true and true to false. And there will be a little bit of conditional rendering where it says if is open, then show the text. If is closed, show nothing. And since all these components are behaving the same way, we can just create one component, and inside of the page.js, we can have a map function. And for each question and answer, it's going to return these client components. Okay, so first, let's create the main skeleton for this part, and I'm going to reuse a little bit of the code that we've had made previously. Okay, so I just added a section tag, and exactly like we did for pricing, I'll have a p tag, FAQ, and an h2 tag with the frequently asked question text. And below the headlines, we're going to have a list of question and answers. We need to put some JavaScript in here. So then I'll need to create an array with, at the moment, just one object. This object has a key question and a key answer. Then I am going to map over this array so we can return some actual JSX. This is the function that we will run on every element. It's going to get each object with the question and the answer here, and it is going to return a list item. And as we've studied before, each element needs to have a different key. So we need to pass a unique key. And I'm going to say that the key is equal to QA, which is this value here, is going to be equal to each object inside of the array, so each question and answers. And we're going to say that this unique value will be the question, because every question will be different. And then for the value inside, we're going to say it's equal to QA.question as well. And then now that we save, we have this little Q here that appears because it's this QA.question, which is equal to this thing here. Okay, I just replaced the single object we had inside of the array by real question and answers, so we have something that looks more of a real FAQ. In this list item, we will need two things: the question that will be clickable and the actual answer that by default is going to be invisible. So first I'm going to create this button, and the text we want to see inside is the question. Then I'll create another div with the answer. Now we want to add an onClick event listener that will hide or show the actual answer of that question. But if we press save, we're going to run into a big error like we did previously, because this is not a client component. So we need to extract this and turn it into a client component. Okay, so I created this FAQ list item.js file inside of the components folder. You can name it the way you want. It just makes sense to me. Now in page.js, we need to import the component. And in the map function, I added the components, and I also have to give it the key of QA.question because even though it's a component, it needs to have a unique key. So now I can take this piece of code, go back to the FAQ list item component, pass the code here, and of course we will need to import the actual question and answer object as a props. So I'm going to destructure it here in QA and press save. And because we don't pass any QA for now as a prop, of course, we're going to have an issue because QA is undefined. There is no value at the moment. So QA.question will actually return an error. So we just need to go back to the page.js, and here we need to do QA equal QA. So now when we go over this array, the map function is going to return the component we just created, the FAQ list item. And for each object inside of this array, the FAQ list item will receive each object as a props, and is going to be able to show the questions and the answers. And we still have a little errors. It's because here we need to declare these components, of course, as a client component. And now when we press save, it is working as before. Okay, now for each FAQ list item, we want to import the useState hooked we studied earlier, because we want each of these list items to have a stateful variable that says if the user hasn't clicked on it, then it's hidden. If the user click on it, then we show. So we're going to name it this way. We're going to call that Boolean variable is open, and the setter to change the value to set is open, and by default we give it the value of false. So every list item will not show the answer unless the user clicks on it. Okay, I removed the div for the answer, and there are multiple ways we could actually show or hide this part of the code. So first, we will need to write some JavaScript, so curly braces, and then we're going to use the ternary operator we studied earlier. So if this thing is true, then we're going to show this div. If it is not true, we're going to show this little thing here. This thing here is called a React fragment. It's basically going to return just nothing on the page there. If is open, it's false. We just need to return something, and that something is going to be just nothing. Another way to do the conditional rendering, and the one we'll pick, is to write the div, and then inside of the class name have a set of curly braces so we can add any template literals. And then we're going to say that if it's open, then the div should be a display block by default, meaning it's here, it's like it's a block on the page. But if it's not open, then the display should be hidden, meaning that we won't see the div. Okay, now the final part that's missing inside of this button on the onClick event handler, the function should set is open to the opposite value of what it currently is. If it's open, we want to close it. If it's closed, we want to open it. And so the way to do this in JavaScript is to add exclamation mark is open. Is open is either true or false, and the exclamation mark is going to reverse that value. True becomes false, false becomes true. And now when we save the file and we go to the FAQ, you see that if we click on it, it shows the actual answer or not based on if it's clicked or not. Since we just have one line here, we can remove the semicolon and remove the curly braces here and here. So we have just this set up on one line. Okay, now let's polish a little bit the clickable section. We're going to add some padding horizontally to make it breathe. We're going to make the font weight a little bit higher, and we're probably going to add a border at the bottom. And we want these to take the entire width of the page, and we want the text to remain on the left. Maybe we can add a little icon on the right, like a plus or minus icon, whether it's open or not. So first we're going to wrap this question inside of a p tag, just so we separate the code. And then we're going to add some conditional JavaScript, and that says, if it's open, show the minus sign, and if it's closed, show the plus sign. So that the signs are on the same line as the question, we want to make it as a flex container. By default, it's a row, and we want items to be centered on the vertical axis. So we're going to say items center. And we're going to add justify between, so elements are pushed as far as they can from each other. And maybe it would be actually cool to use some SVGs as we've studied previously. So we're going to go back to hero icons, and I'm going to copy the SVG, the JSX for the plus icon, as well as the minus icon. And here we go. I replace the string text by the actual SVG icon, and we have something that's a little bit looking better. Okay, and to finish on the answer part, we have this conditional class that is applied whether it's open or not. And we want to add a little bit of margin at the top. So a little bit above the answer, we want to add a little bit of space so it's not too close to the question. And we want to add a little bit more spacing underneath the answer so that it doesn't get confused with the following question. And I just added opacity 90, so 90% opacity, just to create a little contrast between the question and the answer. And when we look at the results on a bigger screen, we see that it's taking lots of width, actually a little bit too much. So we want to make sure there is a maximum width. So for that, I can directly use the UL container in the page.js and say class name. I'm going to say max width LG. So this is smaller, like 500 something pixels. And MX Auto to make sure that it's centered in the center. And then when we look at it, it looks much better. There you go. You created your first client component using React. You used the hook, use state, you use the conditional rendering to either show something or not, and you also use the onClick event listener.